Well, howdy, rebooters, and welcome back to the channel. You are witnessing another behind-the-scenes look at how I create an episode of Love People Use Things, the podcast that I co-host with my friend Matt Frad. So you can either watch me make this episode here, or you can head on over to lovepeopleusethings.fm, listen/download this episode and all of our past episodes. You can listen on your commute, on your way to work. You can listen to us in the shower. You can listen however you so desire. Okay, let's get started on this episode, shall we? Hello. This is Noah Church, back hosting another episode of Love People Use Things, the podcast that is all about pornography, its influence on us individually, its influence on us in our relationships, and as a society as a whole, and importantly, inspiration and an exploration of how to become free of that influence for those of us who have realized that it has had a negative impact on our lives, and we want to build a life porn-free, a life where we can appreciate real intimacy, real sensuality and sexuality without the influence of the pornographers in our brains. So I co-host this podcast, with my friend Matt Frad. We have quite different backgrounds. We have very different belief systems. Matt is a Catholic apologist, and if you don't know what that is, I didn't really either until I met Matt. I always thought it was someone who apologized for something. So a Catholic apologist would be very apologetic about that religion. But that's not actually what it means. What it means, as I've come to think of it, is that he is a warrior of words. An apologist's job is to professionally defend and promote an ideology with words and with logic and with debate. And that has very much developed Matt into quite the podcast host. So if you haven't listened to Matt's episodes, specifically his episode from last week, you should go back and listen to that one. It was quite inspiring. He was very well caffeinated and passionate and really is good at getting you pumped up to live a porn-free life. His episode last week was all about what failure really means, and redefining failure in opposition to a setback or a slip. Many of us have slips. We make mistakes. We have setbacks. We're human. But we tend to think of ourselves as failures when this happens. And that, I think Matt would agree with me, is a mistake. True failure is not trying in the first place. True failure is giving up on yourself when you do have a setback, not trying anymore. A real warrior, someone who fights for what he or she wants to build in his life, will get up after a setback and after a failure. We'll keep going. We'll learn from that and try to continue moving forward and building the life that they want. So I highly recommend last week's episode, after this one, of course. Today, I'm going to be talking about knowing ourselves, really getting familiar with our own little tricks that we use to convince ourselves to hurt ourselves, to go against the promises we have made to ourselves, to sabotage our own growth and progress in the name of temporary, passing, fleeting pleasure. Now, this most especially applies to addicts who are going to be well familiar with what I'm talking about today, but all of us have slips in willpower, and all of us rationalize the decision that we want, that we desire in the moment, even if it's not actually best for us. See, we are very good at convincing ourselves that we are acting logically, even when we are not. And this can result in a lot of self-conflict and a lot of confusion about what we actually believe and what we actually want to do, what actions we want to take in this world. Because in the moment, there are two principal parts of us that do battle when we are facing a temptation or an urge to use a substance or a behavior that we know is bad for us. And when that is something that we are confronted with in that moment. Our brains are flooded with dopamine. We are having that craving, that hunger, and we start to have tunnel vision and not really think clearly about the consequences of what we're about to do, or we simply stop caring so much about the consequences and just want to experience that pleasure in the moment and forget about all of our problems for a while. But that rational part of ourselves that does foresee the consequences, that does think about the future and learn from the past, isn't shut down entirely. It's still there, but it's very vulnerable to rationalizing the behavior that the more bestial, animal part of us wants to do. So in that moment, we can lie to ourselves. We can make us believe that we're acting logically, even when we're simply acting on impulse. And in that way, we sabotage ourselves. And afterwards, of course, when the fog has cleared and we're thinking more clearly again, our impulses and our urges have died down because we've sated them for the moment, that part of ourselves that is rational comes back to the surface and realizes, well, that didn't result in anything good for me. That didn't help me grow, help me become stronger, help me become more the person that I really want to be. In fact, I sacrificed everything I've been working for so long. Say you're trying to lose weight and, most every evening you convince yourself to eat that chocolate or eat that slice of pie, go for that burger, or you're trying to quit smoking, but you keep convincing yourself in the moment that it's the right thing to do. Well, today we're going to go over some of those rationalizations and analyze them and call them out into the light so that we can recognize when we tell ourselves these things in the moment, no, this isn't true, this is a lie, I'm just deceiving myself. And hopefully that will allow us to better get in touch with what's actually going to align with what we want for ourselves. This is an exercise that I often have people do, clients do. For those who don't know, I am a pornography addiction and porn-induced sexual dysfunction recovery coach. So I help people overcome these problems. And this is an exercise that I often have them do, is just to write down these lies that they tell themselves in the moment when they're feeling those urges in order to convince themselves to just go ahead and give in. So I'm going to go over some of these. Some of these are things that I've told myself in the past. Some of these come from clients. But we're going to go through them one by one. Some of them barely deserve a rational response because they are so clearly deceptions. But we're going to go through them anyway and call them out. All right, first one, I'm just going to search for blank. It's small, it's not going to be nearly as bad as the stuff I used to look at. It won't be a big deal. So I'm talking about a pornography addict, obviously. Someone who's convincing themselves that, well, it's just a picture of a pretty model. It's just an erotic story. It's nowhere near the sort of hardcore material that I used to consume. It's not going to be nearly as bad. It'll be fine. But most often, it's not fine. Most often, that first step is a step down a slippery slope. And once they are caught up in that searching, seeking behavior of an addict giving in, they're swept away in that wave of desire and impulse and dopamine, and they just keep following those impulses down the rabbit hole. So it might start with just some relatively innocent pictures of attractive women online or attractive men, or whatever your desire may be, but then soon enough, most often, you're back looking at the most hard or extreme or disturbing material that inspired you to try to quit using pornography in the first place. It can be a real slippery slope, and it might not happen right away. Maybe for 15 minutes you're just looking at pictures of models or people in swimsuits, but then next time when you convince yourself to do it again, that just doesn't give you the same buzz because you're going back up that slope of tolerance where you're just seeking more and more arousing and interesting and enticing imagery to arouse yourself with. And you start back down that path, and you know where that path leads. All right, the second deception and rationalization. I'm bad Anyway, this is just a part of who I am. I'm always going to have this darkness inside me. I'm always going to have these urges. It's just who I am. I can't fight it. I might as well just give in now. Why would I torture myself like this? Well, that is simply not true. Now, it is true that we are all sexual beings. We all have sexual desires. That's nothing to be ashamed of. That's nothing to try to expunge from who you are. But your desire for pornography or for specific genres of pornography that you find disturbing or against your morality, that is not innately part of who you are. That is something that you have become conditioned to desire, probably over years of consistent use of internet porn. That's not who you are, and it doesn't have to be who you are in the future. Instead, the truth is that the longer you stay away from pornography, the more your sexuality is going to return to its more natural state. I've worked with many, many people who have left pornography behind, people who had developed interests through their pornography use that disturbed them, that diverged from what they had found sexy and attractive when they had never seen pornography. But they were conditioned to like more and more extreme and perhaps disturbing genres or sex acts as they used pornography. But once they quit, their brains started to return to a more natural normal. And they discovered that those things that arouse them so much in pornography maybe don't even do anything for them in real life anymore. They have no interest in them, or they have very little interest in them. And what actually turns them on in real life might completely surprise them. It might be something as simple as the laugh of someone you're attracted to. And they start to get in touch with the things that are more innocent and more naturally arouse us about being intimate with another person rather than being a voyeur behind a screen. All right, number 3, I already failed. I already relapsed. I already searched for images. I already masturbated to porn once today or yesterday. I might as well keep going because, once more won't matter. I can always start again tomorrow or next week, and that's another one, is that whatever you do today won't matter because you can always start on this journey again sometime in the future. This is a mistake that I've seen so many people fall prey to, thinking that, well, because they made one mistake, they might as well make a bunch more mistakes before they get back on the right path. But that's simply ignoring the science that we know of how addiction happens and how addiction is reinforced. Now, if you're clean from pornography for weeks or months and you have a slip, you have a setback, as Matt called it last week, that doesn't mean that everything you fought for is worth nothing, that you're back at zero. If you keep a counter of how many days porn-free you have, that might give you the illusion that you're back at zero, you're back at nothing. You might as well enjoy zero while you have it before attempting to go for another streak. But that is not how the brain works. When we have a binge, that's when we reinforce our addiction most powerfully. That's when we bring those circuits back to life, and that is going to hold you back much, much more than a single setback or slip. I can't handle this struggle right now. The time isn't right. I have an important meeting tomorrow. I have to get to sleep tonight, and the only way I'm going to get to sleep is if I masturbate to porn. I might as well give in now so I can function tomorrow or function today and restart it later when it will be easier, when the time will be better, it'll be more right, I'll have more free time, I can really focus on this thing. But right now, I just have to use porn and get that out of the way so it's out of my mind and I can focus on my life. Well, the time is never going to be perfect. There's always going to be something to focus on, something big and important coming up, some social event that you want to be present for, or some work project that you need a lot of concentration and focus for. But in the moment, a lot of people are going through withdrawal symptoms once they quit pornography, especially in the first few weeks and few months. They might be facing really intense urges and cravings or have insomnia or have mood swings, or be really distracted and unable to focus. And they think, well, it's better if I just use a little porn and keep myself functional rather than go through this and just be completely unfunctional in the hope that it's going to get better someday. But really, your only hope of reaching a true normal functionality where you're just living your life as best you can is to leave porn behind. And there's never going to be a better time in the future than right now. Whatever you do today, you are likely to keep doing in the future. So if you decide today, no, you know what? I might not be able to go to sleep well tonight. I might only get a couple of hours, but it's going to be worth it because when I wake up tomorrow and I go to work, I want to be able to tell myself, yes, you fought a battle last night and you won, and you can be proud of that. And I might be tired right now. I might not want to get out of bed, but I can feel good about the decision I made last night. And I am not going to give up. I'm going to keep fighting and keep moving forward. Rather than waking up in the morning, maybe you got a few hours extra sleep because you relapsed to pornography and that helped you get to sleep in the moment. But you feel bad about yourself because you know that you broke another promise to yourself. You sacrificed the long-term goals that you have for short-term benefits. You don't feel proud of yourself. You might feel less confident throughout the day because you didn't win that battle in your mind. You gave in and broke a promise to yourself, went against your own ideals. There's no better time than right now, my friends. All right, the next one. These urges are just going to keep getting worse and worse until I give in, so I might as well just let go now. It can feel like that in the moment, that these urges and temptations are too powerful to resist, we're tired, we just want to let go. But the truth is that urges are more often like waves. They can feel overwhelming in the moment, but if we give ourselves time to breathe, to step out of that situation, then they pass. And we're back in still waters, and we can just get back to focusing on our lives. Now, some days, especially in the beginning, are going to be worse than others. You might be faced with more frequent or more persistent urges, but the concept is the same. You ride it out to the other side, and you can get back to your life. It's not going to keep plaguing you continually until you give in. Next, it's not fair to ask myself to give up my sexuality, to give up women entirely. Well, this is a straw man that you're setting up for yourself, which means no one's actually asking you, and I don't think you should be asking yourself to give up your sexuality or to cut out that part of yourself. You might be abstinent entirely on a temporary basis, but the goal of that is to rediscover our true sexuality, to rediscover real, satisfying, intimate connection with romantic partners, not to deny that part of yourself. This journey isn't about self-denial, it's about self-discovery and coming back to a new, healthy normal. It's been so long that I've been porn-free, I'm healthy now, and using porn just a little bit won't be a problem. The truth is, there are a lot of people out there who use pornography in moderation, and it never becomes a salient problem in their lives. It never holds them back from having satisfying relationships or satisfying sexual experiences. It never becomes an addiction or something that gets in the way of them living their lives. It's like with any other addictive substance or behavior. I can drink alcohol on occasion just fine. I never get drunk. I never do things that I regret. It doesn't affect my physical health. It doesn't happen very often. I usually have just 1 or 2 drinks among friends. It doesn't become a problem. But that doesn't mean that it's not a problem for those who are addicted to alcohol. And an alcoholic can never go back and drink in moderation and have the kind of relationship to alcohol that I have, because they are an addict. And you have to be honest with yourself. When you are an addict and you're recovering, that sort of healthy, quote-unquote, moderate approach to using is not generally going to be an option for you. It's far too easy to fall back down that slippery slope and end up right back where you started with all the problems you worked so hard to free yourself from. So don't become complacent and think that just because you've been away from porn for a long time, that potential for negative, habitual, and compulsive use doesn't still exist within you, and it can be reactivated quite easily if you allow that to happen. I don't have to be porn-free right now. I'm too busy. I just don't have the time right now. If you don't have the time to work on yourself and become porn-free, then you probably don't have the time to use porn either. So if that's a thought that's crossing your mind, think about how much time you spend consuming pornography. And if you don't think you have time to not consume pornography or to not focus on overcoming that behavior, then you shouldn't have time to use porn either. Like I said before, there's no better time than right now to get started. It might seem inconvenient. I know you have other things going on in your life, but in the long term, it's going to be much better for your productivity and much better for your happiness and welfare and well-being to be porn-free, even if it's hard right now in the moment, even if there are dips and valleys and periods where it's causing a problem for you, where you're facing withdrawal symptoms or you're distracted by urges. In the long run, you are going to be a stronger, more productive individual as a porn-free person. I'm cured now, so I can forget about all the things that helped me get clean in the first place. Similar to the other one where, I've been porn-free for so long, it won't be hurtful to go back and use a little porn. In this one, it's, all those habits and disciplines that I built into my life to allow myself to be porn-free. Things like consistently keeping in touch with my friends and family and being open with them and allowing them to hold me accountable. Being in touch consistently with the activities that make me feel proud and strong and keep me growing and moving forward along the path that I have picked out for myself. Things like exercising every day or getting up on time, being productive, not getting lost in other distractions and other means of escape, like playing video games or binging TV or Netflix series. Once you're cured, quote unquote, you might believe that you don't need all these disciplines anymore. You can just live freely and not holding yourself accountable or not keeping yourself on those schedules and activities that allowed you the discipline to stay clean in the first place. You might feel that way, but once you start letting all of those things slip and you're 6 hours into binging a Netflix series, you're feeling impulsive, you might find that those urges to search for erotic content online are resurging. And that's because we can never lose touch with the things that we learned and the ways in which we grew that allowed us to be porn-free in the first place. Don't get complacent. Be vigilant. Pornography and the urge to use it or to seek it out doesn't have to control you. It doesn't even have to be a thought in your mind every single day in your life moving forward. You won't, once you're free for long enough and recovered far enough, be facing strong urges to use every day. But you can't forget that those pitfalls are there, that you are an addict, that you have those compulsive tendencies, and you can't forget what allowed you to overcome that and grow beyond it. Because if you do, it can be easy to slip back into old habits. So those are some rationalizations that maybe sounded familiar to you. Maybe you've told yourself similar things, if not with pornography, maybe with other behaviors like overeating or playing too many video games or staying up late watching movies when you should be sleeping and getting ready for work in the morning. Maybe drinking too much or using illicit substances, mind-altering substances, whatever it may be. We've all rationalized to ourselves, giving in to our desires and making it seem like the logical thing to do in the moment. But bringing these rationalizations to light can help us reveal their true nature. These are not logical arguments. They're not going to help us grow, become the people we really want to be. We can recognize these now when we tell them to ourselves, and we can call ourselves back into the moment and say, wait a minute, Noah talked about this. I recognize I've told myself this before, and it ended badly. So I'm going to put a stop to that line of thought right now and do something else. And what that something else is what I'd like to talk about next. it's important to have a plan for what you're going to do when you are faced with that decision point where it's, am I going to look at porn right now, or am I going to do something else, blank? We should know in that moment what we would like ourselves to do, because when we are facing that urge, a lot of our brain power is dedicated toward getting us to give in, and our rational selves are limited in their capacities during that time to think clearly, to foresee consequences, to decide what's actually best for us. So it'll be much easier if you know beforehand exactly what you'd like yourself to do, if you have a plan. Now, this plan should be something simple and easy to do. It should be something that takes you out of that situation for 10 minutes or so and allows you to think more rationally and get back to thinking about what's actually good for you, what you actually want for yourself. Some people, that plan might look like, if they're browsing the computer late at night and they start having an urge, they put on their shoes and take a walk around the block. Maybe they call a friend during that time and just have a chat. And this allows them to get out of that moment and get themselves into a different environment, allows that wave of an urge to pass, and allows the rational part of themselves to regain control and get a new footing. Another one that I use is when I have an urge, I will go to my journal and I'll just tell myself, I don't have to decide never to use porn again in this moment, because that can seem like an overwhelming decision to make if you're facing a powerful urge. But I can tell myself, I'm not going to use porn until I write an entire page in my journal. So I start writing, and I'll write about how I'm feeling in that moment. I might start writing about past instances where I did give in to that urge and how it felt afterward. I might write about what is actually causing this feeling right now. And I'll think about that acronym HALT that is common in addiction recovery. It stands for hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. And what it's supposed to allow you to think about is, where are these urges actually coming from? Often it's from something simple, a simple discomfort like being hungry or being angry, feeling alone, or feeling fatigued and tired. And when you think about that and go through each of those, you can actually address the core issue right now. Maybe I'm just hungry. I need to make a snack, and afterwards I'll feel better. I'll have more willpower. I can focus on what I actually want to do today. Maybe I'm angry with my friend. I've been stewing on it for a while, and what I actually need to do is call them up and work things out. Maybe I'm lonely, and I should take a friend out to lunch or something. Call my mom. Maybe I'm just tired and I need to go for a relaxing walk or take a nap or something. So this journal plan allows me to bring myself back into the rational, bring myself back into clear thinking, and by the time I reach the end of the page, which I almost never do, I don't want to use porn anymore. I'm back thinking more clearly and I'm in my right mind. I know that that's not actually what I want, and I've decided on another course of action. Maybe I can just get right back to work on the computer if I feel like I'm totally past the urge. Maybe I can decide to do something else, like go for a little run outside, make a snack, etc. You should have a plan like that that is easy to enact, and you should have in mind exactly what you expect from yourself in that moment. And you should practice it. Even when on a day that you don't feel an urge, you don't feel tempted, you should imagine what that might feel like when it does come and physically practice your plan. Or you can just visualize what you would do in that moment and practice it in your imagination. And that way we build it as a habit. We make it something automatic. So when we do face that moment, when we are caught in that decision point and our rational faculties are limited, it's more of a habit. It's automatic. And we can just make that choice, and it gives ourselves that time that we need to let the urge pass. So think about what your own plan might be and try to write it out. Try to practice it on a daily basis and use that to bring yourself back to your rational mind in those moments when you're in danger of breaking a promise to yourself and sabotaging your own progress. All right. What did you all think of that? Was that helpful? Hopefully, it allowed you to better understand yourself, your own struggles or journey through becoming a porn free individual. Maybe it helps you better understand someone else in your life. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you have, you should listen to more. There's 3 seasons of these episodes to listen to. I haven't been present for all of them, but Matt Fradd has done an amazing job. You can go over to lovepeopleusethings.fm. And also at that website, if you click the support button, you will be linked to our Patreon page, which is a platform that allows our supporters to choose to support us on a monthly basis monetarily and say to us, you, Matt and Noah, are doing a good thing. You are having a conversation that needs to be had, and I'd like to continue hearing these episodes. And that means the world to us. It means that not only will we continue to make these episodes, but we can also increase our involvement in the Love People Use Things platform and create more content for you all. There's also a series of rewards that you as Patreon supporters can get access to at different tiers, different levels of support. So go over to our Patreon to check those out. There's some pretty exciting ones, including signed books and T-shirts and things like that. Uh, check back in next week for another episode from Matt Fradd, and you will hear me in 2 weeks. I hope you all have a wonderful porn-free day. You'll hear me next time. I never know how to end these things. Bye.